Okay, there we go. So I have sound. Meowth does not have sound. Okay,
Do I have sound now?
you do have sound. Okay.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to LoreLines episode
Waiting
136.
room.
Sorry, I said waiting room 86. I was like, is this episode 86 or 136? Is it 186? I don't know. So I'm gonna play the intro because we don't have a wait room today, so there was no time to test anything because I was stuck in traffic. So I'm gonna play that, and then we'll be right back after I fix the audio while I play this distracting video for 30 seconds. Please look forward to it. Okay, we're back. That was the quickest lead up ever. It's just like hit the button, go live, the end. That's all there is to it. So
Listen, if it works, it works.
yeah, I mean, usually we have like 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes beforehand to test out all the audio, especially when we have a guest on, to get everything sorted out. And there's still problems. And today it's just like, nope, just go straight in. There's no testing, nothing. Hey,
Yeah.
Ellie, how are you?
Hey, Ellie.
So, yeah, we were talking about Twitch and their new highlights reel possible. So, for those of you who may go and watch our videos after they air, Twitch is kind of paring down their highlights. So it's a max of 100 hours, and because we have like 500 hours, I think,
500
of
hours.
something like of just highlights of our past episodes, not including episode 1, which is lost forever to the sands of time. You napped and forgot what time it is. That's okay. I went out to eat and forgot what time it is, and then apparently everyone else forgot what time it was and decided to cause a traffic jam. So that's why there was no lead up today. What was I talking about? Right, the highlights reel.
Highlight.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to watch our past episodes and things that we've talked about in the past, it should all be on YouTube. That's why we simulcast on YouTube, so that in the event this does happen, it's over there, and you can watch any of our past broadcasts there. We also have our actual video channel where we sometimes produce videos when I have time and scripts. Meow. Thank you for getting me that what 15-page script you sent me. And I'm like, this is okay. All right.
It wasn't wasn't 15. It was 5 pages. What are you
5?
talking
Okay.
about?
All right. Well, it's gonna be a 15-minute video or something like that.
Let me check. I'm how many pages? It's
I have it up.
5 pages, Cobb.
I have it up, and I okay. So let me see. It's 5 pages single spaced, so that's like 10 pages. It's fine. It's fine. How are you? How are you? How have you been this week?
Well, working on a really weird project, but if I manage to carry it out, because my projects are always at LoreLine's disposition, because we're a team, and when it comes to lore diving, it's anything we may achieve on that front is because we all work together.
True.
So when I'm done with it, my idea is to have it released as a LoreLines project.
Okay.
And if I manage to make it like proper, this could be the biggest flex I've ever done in my career as both an artist and a lore diver.
I love it. I love it. So okay.
Modesty aside.
Did you play the Valention's event in 14?
Yeah,
Okay, I did too. It
I
was
did.
very short, but I really liked it. It was really sweet.
Uh, the thing that I actually asked, because with all the things that are happening in when it comes to certain references, because that's you can't really hide certain references from me.
Right.
Um, the this year's event was themed about roses,
Hmm.
and and I specifically asked, have you, because I didn't usually play Valentine's Day event, and I asked, has ever in the story of this event has been focused on the flowers, and they and people told me no, it was the first time, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, okay, because roses, well, uh, they really mean things in Final Fantasy 13.
I
So
know. I know. Lightning's hair, the Phantom Rose. I remember.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think it
So
was specifically related to that. It actually reminded me of the Heavensward Botany quests, where they talked
right.
about the purity of Ishgardian agriculture, basically. So they were like, oh yes, this.
Mm.
I don't remember exactly what vegetable it was, but I'm gonna say it was a popoto because they're from the New World, and it makes no sense that it would be a popoto. Um,
Mm.
but if it's, for example, we'll just say it's this Ishgardian popoto was from Korthus. We grow it in the Sea of Clouds. It's always been from the Sea of Clouds, and then eventually find out it's not from the Sea of Clouds at all. It just grows really well there. And it kind of reminded me of that a little bit, where it's like, okay, we have these flowers that are the symbol of House Hallian. I can't pronounce Hallianarte. Hallianarte. Uh,
Uh,
like that house,
don't
the Rose House, where all the side
don't
quest people are from.
don't ask me about speaking baguette. I can't.
Anyway, the side quest house where all of those people are from, because I feel like every side quest
Right.
in Ishgard has to do with this house, not any of the other houses.
Hmm.
Um, and so they have the flower as their symbol, and they said this is our sacred flower. It can't be taken anywhere. We can only grow it. We're the only ones that grow this flower. And so this gardener picks up a bunch of flowers, runs off to Gridania, and plants them there, and asks
Hmm.
the this guy at the botanist guild to look after them. And then the sixth or the seventh emerald calamity happens, and all the flowers in Ishgard are destroyed. They're completely wiped out and thought to be extinct. But because she committed a crime and stole these flowers and took them to Gridania, they lived, and did not go extinct. And this poor gardener has been like, my God, she loved me so much. She brought me these flowers, and I've cultivated them, and now they're going to be the symbol of this year's Valentine's event in Gridania. And the guy from House Halliard comes down and he's like, "What the fuck is this? These are the extinct flowers. These are our symbol. What are they doing here?" And it turns out because she stole them and they weren't extinct, there were no repercussions for her because she actually saved them from going extinct. But she's still a criminal. But because they're not extinct, her crimes are forgiven, and the entire time this guy's like, man, I love this woman so much, and I want to meet her again. I hear she's back in town, and I want her to see all the flowers that I've grown for her, not realizing that he's committed a crime and that they're all stolen, that she's basically turned him into a criminal without knowing. But
Yeah,
because she
but
saved it from extinction, it's okay. And eventually he's like, you know what? I love you. Please marry me. And she decides, because she doesn't want to go to prison, that she will marry him so that her crimes will be forgiven.
oh, I mean, on
Yeah.
its own, it's a nice story. I enjoyed it, but if we start going into what the the implications can be on the larger scope, that's where things get interesting. Because I've been noticing that, especially after Dawn Trail,
Hmm.
that they are including themes, really, really distinct themes in the events. I mean, the events, they write it with the story of 14 in mind, of course. So,
So I,
everything is lore, even the
yeah, I
events.
mean, everything is part of MSQ. Everything contributes to the world. My complaint, I guess, is it's just 3 quests. It was really good. I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
enjoyed it, but I missed the little maze. And if they had just done the maze again with this and been like, oh, the flowers are at the end of this maze, get a friend and navigate the maze, because the maze is
Mm.
really fun. I don't know if you ever did it.
Uh, no. The only place I think I've been in event is that sort of haunted house that All Saints Wake has
Okay,
once.
I did that once. Yeah, there used to be a maze though in previous Valentine's Day events
Right.
where it was you and another person, and you could only be so far apart. And so you had to work together to get through this maze, and it was really cute. I really liked it, and I wish they had it back. I want it back.
That's loaded if you think about
It's
it.
absolutely loaded. It was so good. Ow. Sorry.
What happened, John? Are you okay?
Yeah, don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm fine. I promise.
No, but it's loaded because you're telling me about mazes, and the first thing that came to my mind is labyrinthos and the
Hmm.
concept of labyrinthos, which is a cage basically. It's
Yeah.
a fake. It's the place with the fake sky. It's a dome, exactly like
You and your fake sky.
ever. Listen. I'm very serious about that part.
Ellie's like, listen, okay.
because 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 if we're going into yeah, that's true. You play 13 of
I mean, yeah, I did play
if we're
13, and I even said the fal'Cie are just falsies.
they are
They're like,
fallacies, yeah.
well, they're fallacies, but falsies, like fake teeth. So
Hmm.
dentures, they're not real. Nothing they make is real. They're just there to cultivate people. By the way, spoiler
Hmm.
for Final Fantasy 13.
But uh but here's the thing. uh if you think about the whole trilogy, if this Neo arc is going to be based on 13,
Hmm.
on FNC, if you will, the fake sky is so on point, or our reality being trapped in a shell of sorts, on a cage, going by Pandemonium's themes, because that's exactly what Cocoon is.
Right. I am.
So
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm gonna
no,
switch to
it's just that
me running
it's
around
just that
gathering in the game.
it's just that it's in game. I mean, I don't know if you've done P12S.
I
Uh,
haven't done
I
NES.
suppose not.
I
Right.
I've done
Well,
regular, but I have not done
so,
P12S.
right. So for context, in the fight, Pallas Athena is like second phase of P12S,
Right.
right? Um, then there's an extra phase of sorts in which change. It's near. I don't know if it's near Enrage or whatever. Um, in which it's when the jokes about the zoom out came to be, because that's what the screen effect is. There's like a zoom out and you see the whole arena,
Hmm.
and what you can see and what you
And
can see is
and
the
AC.
platform, like
Yeah.
half sphere. The planet. It's actually, you're standing on a split sphere, in which technically makes Earth flat, amusingly, and and you see Pallas Athena. We could say Ultima at this point. Um, Looking at that from behind a sphere with constellations enveloping the star, the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you give me that visual, what do you expect me to think?
Fair.
like, like I mean, we know that they tend to go ham when it comes to lore in Savages, because well, not so many people do that,
Mm-hmm.
and going through that is almost like a reward on its own. Um, so, but of course, the real weight of the savage tears, it's not something they're going to, tell you in your face. Like, it's the fights it's being like they hide, quote unquote, um, what they want to tell in references and symbols.
Right.
And of course, it takes. I mean, the casual player is more focused. Not saying that it's bad to be a casual player. Not everyone has to be interested in lore, But we're here because we're interested in lore.
So
uh, uh,
I kind of want to address AC's comment. Didn't Lightning become a fashion model at the end of the 13 trilogy? And while I said yes, that's not entirely accurate. She didn't become a fashion model. She became a Louis Vuitton model, and also a stunt driver for, I believe, Nissan.
well,
So,
jokes aside,
no,
jokes aside, she didn't. It's just
no. In my mind, she absolutely did. That she finished the photo shoot before she got off the train. I've seen the video. And then addressing, what a wild career change Soldier to model. If you played the 13 trilogy, she makes that career change by Lightning Returns, I believe. In Lightning Returns, she's pretty much a model already. So like
that's very much Hope's fault. To be
it is Hope's fault, but also I still remember that first shot of her on top of the tower, where she just like
Yeah.
takes the sunglasses off, and I'm like, all right, she's full-fledged model now.
I mean, it's extra, but it's cool.
Oh, it's super extra. I love it. I love it.
You get a pass.
Yeah, and yeah, AC says it may not be lore accurate, but I find the Savage Raids do add interesting thoughts to consider. Absolutely, I like to look at the Savage Raids as nice what ifs, but at the same time, there are things that happen in the Savage Raids where it's like, well, maybe, even though they do explain it as, this is either a retelling or this is an embellished memory of what actually happened. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential
there. To be right, how should I put this? Savage raids and ultimates and all that, it's not in-game canon in the sense of it's not what happened, right? But it's lore accurate in the sense that because it's a what if, it means that the possibility for this happening is there.
Mm-hmm.
So all that happens, you have to observe it as a real possibility, and therefore, if there's a real possibility, all of it is part of the.
I like that, AC. Basically calling it fan fiction, but I would say officially sanctioned fan fiction. Yeah, happened in a different reality. I could see that.
Well, considering we're now in the scenery of, I was going to say multiverse, but
Mm-hmm.
I would, to be honest, I would liken it to just the many possibilities, like Alexander observed, like the many branches that eventually are, if they keep growing and growing, the world's going to collapse.
Well, I mean, there are infinite branches, so that's just it. The reality is called our echo chamber. So basically, when Alexander was summoned, it created infinite timelines. Like that's it. There
Mm.
aren't more being created. It's just infinite. And it almost broke reality. And I don't know why it didn't, but it didn't. But basically, it was a because. And the echo allows us to visualize it. Kind of. The echo's kind of weird. It's
Um,
yeah. I one explanation I really like is how do you explain when you wipe? And because you get the echo buff if you die too much, basically. I've heard it explained that the all failed attempts basically are like an echo vision of what could be, but at the same time, we have not had an example of the Warrior of Light having precognitive echo abilities.
but we know that that's indeed.
It is a thing. Um, what's her name? Begins with an M. Aura in Ivalice.
Mikoto.
Mikoto. We know she has that, and we know it's the worst echo to have. So, because there's no
I
context
mean,
to anything.
but when it comes to the echo, we've been working on things because there's certain aspects of Shadowbringers that um, are really, really strange when it comes to it with the echo, especially regarding. It's not just in Shadowbringers, but it's a bit complicated to explain. But um, there's one particular echo vision, the one after Innocence, right after Innocence, right?
Yeah.
It's that vision is so weird. It's the one thing that made me stop and think. I have to go through the dialogue here really, really carefully because if you think about the implications, will you allow me to ramble a bit
Yeah,
about
go for it. Go
Shadowbringers
for it.
in this aspect? Right. So, the scene in Mount Gulg is where supposedly all the thing about allying with Hades goes to utter hell, right?
Right.
Uh, and it's when we supposedly are being told his real plan or his real intention. The problem is that first, that sequence is really suspicious because first we absorb Innocence light and everything seems to go all right, yes?
Yeah.
And then
Until
we
it
get an
doesn't.
echo vision. Let me elaborate. And then we get the echo vision. In this echo vision, we're supposedly remember that to get an echo vision, you have either to be in the place where something happened because it's the memory of the place,
Yep.
or uh, or you have to experience the memories of that one person you're seeing. You have to be near them, right, to
Right.
connect like with their soul and memory.
Right.
The problem is that we're supposedly seeing Vothri's um, origin, but in that scene, he's unborn. He's still in his mother's womb. He shouldn't have any memory of that.
And the
And then that,
yeah, it can't be the
and
ambient ether either because we're not in the same place.
because we're not in Ilmor exactly, and then it's in this scene when we're supposedly are being revealed that Hades created Vothri, right?
Right.
Uh, but we never see his face, by the way.
That's
We never
true.
see he appears. He appears
But
in the Asian garb, but
right.
we never see his face. And here, this vision is the first thing that it's meant for you, for the player, to antagonize him
Right.
because he's the cause of this whole thing. He's the cause of both three, right? Uh, and if you start analyzing, picking apart that dialogue, it's incoherent because supposedly Hades comes in there and offers to them, I will make a light word and come forth, so I can put this into uh, into your wife's baby, right? Tell me, how the fuck an Asian whose power is the darkness can bring a light warden through?
So I would attribute that to something that Emmett Selk himself would be particularly specialized in. Two things. One, I don't believe for a second we're seeing Vothri's memories. Because Vothri wasn't conceived at the beginning of that. But we know Emmett Selk was there before he appeared. Because, of course, he was watching. So I don't think that we're seeing Vothri's memories at all. I think we're seeing Emmett Selk's memories. It just happens to be concerning Vothri, conveniently. The other thing is we know that Emmett Selk was especially adept at manipulating ether and working with souls. So I don't have a problem thinking that he could manipulate the ether of a person. If he can shift the physical ether of how someone looks, there's no reason he can't change the etheric balance as well. So for in my mind, I don't have an issue with infusing an unborn baby with a quantity of light, or putting a quantity of light into the soul in order to create a light warden, basically. Yeah, exactly, AC. He was watching in the background, or from the shadows as he called it, but he was still there, if that makes sense. So
except except that we never have a vision of we never activate the echo, and it makes sense that it would never activate the echo around him, because as the ancients, they surely must have some manner of protecting themselves. If the echo was a bigger thing in their time, they should be able to block it, because otherwise you would be having memories of it would
but
be intruding on everyone's mind.
but see, the thing is, the echo was something the ancients could freely use. It wasn't something that just triggered randomly. They actually had control over it and integrated it as part of their society. So I don't think necessarily blocking it would really have been something they had considered. Additionally, Emmett Selk never tried to hide the truth for us. If anything, he intentionally triggered the vision in us. I don't know how he would have done that, but I would think that he would want us to have that information, because he used the truth to manipulate us, and by that point, he had already pretty much gotten what he wanted. It was too late. So he can say, okay, now I can give you the whole truth. Now that, you've defeated this last Light Warden, let's see how you handle it. And now that you've done that, here's the whole truth, and let's see if you survive. Yeah. Yeah, ours is just
I
a
have a
fraction of
different.
true
I
potential.
have something different to offer you, though.
Okay.
Now we're stepping into Dawntrail and the concept of preservation, and we know that they can create copies of people
Hmm.
and impersonate them. They've been doing that with Spin,
Right.
after all. And odds are, because there's people are dismissing it, but you and I saw the Historia cracks
Oh
in
yeah.
Zoralja's trial.
Yeah.
So if we're
There's
dealing with
there's time
someone
fuckery afoot,
or
no doubt.
some or if we're dealing with someone or something that can travel through time and can manipulate things and impersonate others to create and guide things as they want it to be,
Hmm.
then what if that Hades we first, what if the one Hades that approached Volthri's parents was fake, and what if the one that confronted us at top Mount Ghoul was also a fake?
I don't believe that. I would
I know, I
sooner.
know, I know, I know it sounds weird, but here's the thing. I went through the dialogue very carefully, and there are falsehoods in. Not going to say falsehoods, incoherences in the dialogue. When you start going through that dialogue and you start taking notes and see what's true and what's not, there's many things that are actually something that if you're paying attention to the story, you realize that it doesn't match. So, and I'm not saying that in the sense of misleading us, because the way he's telling that, it's making it be like this is the truth. But then you go to this is like elaborating at this point, right? But if you go back to the whole of Shadowbringers, it's actually incoherent. Because, for example, I'm going to give you...
Yeah, please. Please give me an example, because I'm not following right now.
Right. Like, for example, when he says... he explains that 100 years ago, I charged... This can be very simple, but it's one example. I tasked my comrade Logrif with making the light swell in the first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not false, because Logrif was there, right?
Right.
The problem is that if you go to the dialogue in Fanov, which is one of the optional dialogues with him, he doesn't tell you just about Logrif. He tells you about Logrif and Mitron,
mm-hmm.
and it's not about that he's ignoring Mitron. He actually makes the point in certain other translations. It's more evident. This was a bit iffy in English, but I understand why it could be. But it's important because in the Japanese translation, I think French as well, he mentions that usually the Asians, after the disaster of the 13th,
mm-hmm.
Were assigned, that usually they were assigned each one a shard, but no one had the heart to separate Logrif and Mitron, so they always worked together.
Right.
So the fact that this dialogue in here, he's not mentioning Mitron, is the first thing I was like, this is strange, because if you go to the dialogue, you know that there's Logrif and Mitron, not just Logrif. And that's not just that. There's also the fact that, of course, Alfino confronts him about lying, and he says this line, "By your 12 boy, haven't I not told you that everything I said is the truth?"
Yeah.
And then you go back to the whole storyline, to the whole dialogue of Shadowbringers, and not in a moment in the dialogue at all, like not optional, not in game, ever. Hades said that everything I say is the truth.
No. But he never did anything but tell us the truth. So here's my thing. I understand what you're saying about Logrif, but
mm-hmm.
it wasn't something they were both tasked with. We know that the primary lead was tasked with a mission, and then they had basically an assistant,
mm-hmm.
which was Logrif. Logrif was the one tasked with it, and Mitron was the assistant. And it was kind of the same thing for La Habrea and Igiorum, where La Habrea was the one who had the assignment and Igiorum was the helper. It's just who that person had helping them changed, but in Logrif's case, it was always Mitron. We don't know
mm-hmm.
if everyone had a... Oh, bless you.
It's okay.
we don't know if there were static pairings or if they changed every once in a while. So I don't think that's a good example. Of him basically telling us lies. And Kakuredi says there's an optional dialogue from Emmett Selk, which the gist of is if what he says isn't the truth, we wouldn't be able to tell anyway. Which is
yes, but that's a big difference. From saying everything I say is the truth.
Right, because which he never says
he's
that.
Actually, because in here he's saying, well, I could be lying, but you wouldn't be able to tell.
Right.
So he's not telling you that everything I say is the truth. He's actually telling you I could be lying,
Right.
but you won't be able to
But
to
but
tell me.
demonstrably, in hindsight, we know everything he told us was the truth. The thing is, he just withheld certain information that made it so that we acted in a way that wasn't really beneficial to us ultimately. I mean, it was, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Well,
The
it depends.
basically turned us
I
into
mean,
a light warden, a super light warden.
for for the record, um, for the record, I'm not saying that this is what it's happening. It's just that it's a real possibility
Mm-hmm.
that we're dealing with someone um, posing as him to drive us further apart. Um, because, well, Asm and Hades, or at this point, the Warrior of Light and Hades, are the twin aspects of Asm. One is the bringer of light, with the other bringer of shadow, because that's what the sun is. The sun bring. We tend to associate the sun with light, but in real life, without artificial light, the only source of shadow is the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So, so if both of them together are the real power of Asm, if someone would be fearful of that as a real threat, well, you know what they say, divide and conquer, right?
Right.
So if there's a bigger, this is just ifs, right? This is
Right.
possibilities, but if there's someone out there, who I'm referring to, interested in keeping us separated and create conflict, one of the ways to do that is create confusion. And you know we have to bear in mind that the zodiac sign that defines Hades as Emet-Selch is
Mm-hmm.
Gemini. So
Right.
when it comes to twins, that's his theme. He could entirely have a fake version of himself, going by just themes, posing as him, and creating all the things and making all sort of things I mean, I'm not saying he's a saint, but you know, how should I put this? He has his own demons to deal with, but
Yeah.
it could be even putting more of more guilt on his shoulders, if it makes sense.
Kind of. It just, for me, if it wasn't actually Emet-Selch, it would be really bad storytelling. Because the way they structured it is we meet him at basically at the end of his life, and then we meet him, when he's young, before the Sundering, and we see these two aspects of him. For me, that's the meaning of Gemini. Is we see him in these two different states, and we see how he changed in hindsight because of what happened. And for me, we already fulfilled that Gemini for him because we see the two aspects of him. So I don't think that introducing Emet-Selch again and saying, surprise, you watched me die, and then I came back at the end and I was dead, but I came back briefly just to say a goodbye, but here I am again, would be kind of the same as doing the whole multiverse thing where he pops up and he says, well, I know I died, but this is an alternate version of me and I'm back just because I'm a popular character. And to me, that really would cheapen the character. And I really hope that's something they're not doing. And for me, I still don't see them moving in that direction. And I really hope that preservation is kind of an afterthought left behind by the Asians that is just being run by people who are left behind and trying to continue what they thought they were supposed to do, but not having the guidance or instruction to actually do it properly and to just kind of screw things up as they go. I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, I understand your point. I just disagree with it.
And that's fine. That's totally fine. Like I'm glad we disagree because
That's
it gives us it gives us a topic of conversation.
but it's I mean, I could start picking things apart, but you don't want me to. You don't want me to do that. It would take so long. but but I fundamentally disagree on the thing about cheapening Hades' character, because what do we really know about him?
Hmm.
When Dontrell introduces the concept of not everything you have been told is has to be the truth,
Right.
it fundamentally changes the whole perspective of the whole MSQ,
Right.
because it means that anything that we have been told and we thought that it was how it was supposed to be, they could be lying to us. So
Hmm.
what is true and what is not, what is not anymore? We don't know that.
So I
Like,
yeah,
I mean,
I see what you're saying. Kind of like how etherology was flipped on its head. Um,
hmm
my thing is if that's the case, then and anything we've been told or seen is a lie or could be a lie, then it
hmm
kind of destabilizes everything in the game.
well,
And
yeah, that's the point.
which kind of just it just makes it a giant retcon at that point, which is saying, well, there's no precedent for this, but they you were told that there were 14 shards, including the source, but there's actually 56, and they're over here because we have these alternate realities that are tied together, like the eighth umbral reality timeline, that
Mhm.
because it was generated so close to where we are now in the timeline that it's still actually etherically tethered. And I mean, there's ways to explain around that, and I get it, but I don't like it. If that makes sense. Yeah, we'd be in limbo trying to find our footing, because if nothing that we've seen or have been told is real, then what have we been doing? Like all this world building that they've been putting
But
effort into, it
that's
just kind of goes out the
that's
window.
that's that's the point. That's the point I'm defending.
I hate that. That's to me, that strikes me as bad writing, because they have this world established already that they need to continue developing and expanding on. They don't need to go back and say, well, let's just kind of say this was all not actually what's going on, and we're going to do a do-over for everything. And it just feels like it would be taking a step backwards. And I'm also
That's not
looking at
exactly what.
this. I'm looking at this also from a business perspective and a development perspective. Like, it seems like a lot of double work for the same amount of payoff, if not less.
Depends on it all depends on how it's handled, because of course for doing something like that there has to be a reason. The thing is that, well, ah, this is so difficult to explain.
Yeah.
Because how sh- it's so difficult trying to put into summarized words
Right.
all the notes. You wouldn't believe the amount of notes, both in my files and in my head,
Uh,
about about this whole thing. Because at this point, let me put it this way: they already gave us the truth,
right.
but not told. They've been telling this story through the previous arc, and
Hmm.
it's scattered in the short stories, in the side quests, in the quests, in the job quests, in everything.
Right.
All of it's in there already. Now, what I'm seeing Dontrell is doing, and supposedly this trilogy they mentioned they were making too. I don't know if they're going to keep it a trilogy, but they mentioned it would be 3 parts.
Yeah.
Uh,
I that's tentative.
uh,
It will be at least 3 expansions. It might be 4. We don't know.
yeah, but let's go with 3, because that's what they said the arc would be. Could be subject to change.
Right.
Yes, but let's go for 9.0. That's
Okay.
the end of this arc. Um, right. So what I saw, explaining the brain melt of Dawn Trail to me it's difficult. But what I saw in Dawn Trail is that they're moving from telling this story in subtle ways. Subtle depends on how you're looking.
Right.
But yeah, let's go with subtle. And they threw subtlety all over the window. It's the subtlety of line returns. Just to understand. That's what Dawn Trail is doing, which kind of tells me that this story has already been laid out, just that not in a way we have noticed.
Right.
And it's now when all these threads are going to be tied together, and everything. Right now, I'm telling you this. And sounds like balderdash. I know that. Don't worry. I'm really aware that without the foundations in which I'm telling you this sort of quote unquote conclusion, it sounds like balderdash. I know that. But there's threads everywhere, and if we're heading into a revelation that all we believed is wrong, is a lie, then all the threads are already there. This much I can tell you. They're there. So it's just a matter of tying them together, and everything makes sense. So I don't. That's why I don't think it's this idea of having no solid footing is a problem, really, because it's already laid out there. That it's going to be footing, but with a different perspective. I mean, Shadowbringers already challenged the whole thing that we believe we know,
Right.
and it was very very little that we got. So if we go back and all that Shadowbringers did was offering us a change of perspective.
Yeah.
If they do that, if they do that, then well, there's nothing really. I mean, of course, we have to be concerned about. We want them to do the job right, especially with something so massive, such as. It would be very, very, very ambitious and very bold, but Shadowbringers was also really, really bold. Not as bold as I would have wanted to be, but I'm fine if they are picking up that boldness to the end of to Act 2.
So I actually agree with that, because I think reframing our perspective about something is a good way of doing it. What I'm saying I don't want is for them to say, well, everything that you've known up until this point is false. Everything that you've learned is out the window. We're actually on a giant spaceship, and we're being controlled by whatever the beings from Final Fantasy Origin are. Stranger of Paradise. It's the Lunafarians. The Lufenians. And it's all their nefarious plot. We're not actually on a planet. There are no shards. It's all just a giant hologram. That would infuriate me.
No. I didn't mean to that. I didn't mean to that in that aspect. Think of it like let me see if I can. Ellie described it better than I. I could.
and that I'm fine with, especially in the realm of something we don't know, like shards. How did the shards interact? What are the actual ethereal mechanics of a rejoining? Like, we've seen how it works, but we don't know why it works that way. Like, that's what I want to know. I want to know why it works that way. Why are these shards still tethered to the source? Why is it possible, or why could it be possible that a natural rejoining could occur? And I would be fine with that, because that's something we still haven't had explained, but we know a little bit about it. And I feel like aetherology was kind of the same. We didn't know how tempering worked or how aether impacted the soul, and we got a lot of those answers at the end of the Shadowbringers arc, and moving into Endwalker. And I so I would be okay with something like that. And yes, there has been a change in the writing and lore lead. So it was Ishikawa, now it's someone else. I don't know exactly who, but with that also comes a new focus on different priorities, saying, okay, we're going to be moving in this direction. Kind of like how Ishikawa had her characters that she wanted to put front and center, Moonbrita, Emmett Selk. Uh, Now with the new lead, they're going to want to do their own thing. They're going to want to put their own footprint on the game, and that's going to include new characters and new things that we see that, while it is tied thematically to the overall narrative, it's going to be also contained within its own arc, if that makes any sense.
Hmm. I mean, yes and
Because it would feel like
no.
it would feel like basically if someone takes, for example, Emmett Selk and says, "Well, I'm going to use this character that's Ishikawa's character in my narrative." First of all, it's
Yeah,
not
but
going to feel the same
but
because the
but
writing is going to be a little different, and it's going
but
to feel like they're just basically writing fan fiction.
nah, I don't think it's the case. Ishikawa is, I think she's still supervising
She is
the lore, if
supervising,
I
but
recall
she's
correctly.
not the lead anymore. She's not lead scenario writer. She's just supervisor.
I mean, that's enough for me. If when it comes to a character like Hades, you have to be sure that you want to portray things correctly.
Right.
Um, but but really, Cobb, there's no in that aspect. There's no doubt about where they are leading the story with Hades. Like it's not subtle, really.
And I get where you're going with that, and it's just I don't agree with it, and I will eat crow if I'm wrong, happily, because I would love to see him again. But I see what Ellie's saying in chat, that we may be dealing with imposters and what they could have meddled with, and we already know that. We know we're dealing with an imposter with Sphene. We have
Hmm.
never met the real Sphene, and we know
Yep.
that. So that's absolute truth. We've
Uh,
dealt with that with Ardbert.
I
We've dealt with that with La Habrea, and that's a recurring thing. So we know we've dealt with imposters pretty much every expansion, Xenos, even,
mhm.
and so that's not something new. And now I feel like expanding that even more would be a misstep.
Depends. It doesn't really have to be a misstep, because like um, here's the important thing to me right now, because if preservation, for example, I'm seeing so many things. Um, I know that saying these things again without the receipts,
Hmm.
or how you
Yeah,
receipt, how you
yeah,
call it.
receipts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So without all of that, it sounds crazy, but you know that I take my job seriously. So
Right.
um, I'm seeing not just the ties with preservation and the the Eighth Emerald Calamity timeline Ironworks, but also with Charlian.
Right.
There's a lot. We were playing Endwalker because of this precisely,
Hmm.
and there is a line directly in Endwalker recently the other day, in the scene in it was it in the scene in which the forum is judging after Labyrinthus, right?
Hmm.
And there's a quote directly referring to Charlatan and the word preservation,
Right.
which I already suspected before that. But going through that cutscene, precisely looking for this sort of stuff, I punched my desk.
Hmm.
Like,
I can imagine.
and and imagine, however, if, because everything, think if Charlatan, be it willing or unwilling, I'm not going to enter into that,
Hmm.
has been working for the one above, you know who I'm referring to, the eye in the sky.
Right.
Um, um, then all that we have been doing as the Warrior of Light, we have been passing on to the science, therefore to Charlian, and acting on their behalf. Everything we know, because we believe they are allies, we've been telling them. All the findings, all the things we've been doing in the fight against the Asians.
Yep.
All of that. Time travel, rift travel, so many things. They have that.
Yep.
So,
we know that. We know that.
Imagine if we have been the ones feeding the intel to the real enemy. We are an agent to the real enemy.
So I would not be surprised.
That sort of shit, I would be all over it, because it's the Neo principle. You are the villain.
So yes, I think that's somewhat of what's going on, and my whole thing of reframing and where I would like to see the game go. I don't know if it's going to go, but where I would like to see it go is that the entire ASEAN plot. So we know the ASEAN plot to rejoin all the shards and sacrifice everyone to Zodiark and get all their old souls back. We know it would not have worked, but they still persisted on it. Why? And my thought is because they were driven to it by something else that they weren't even consciously aware of, which would have been Ultima trying to rejoin herself after she was sundered. And we know the primal Ultima was killed on the source, not the true Ultima. And it's entirely possible and probable that she's got her claws into Charlian. And
if Ultima is sundered, because there's a possibility here that she has been not in the planet when the sundering happened.
But do we know that?
We don't know that, but I don't really want to start picking apart other Final Fantasy references, because if I do that, there's a lot of things that how should I put it? Analyzing other Final Fantasy titles in 14 is not just looking for grasping at straws. They base their storyline on other Final Fantasy titles. So, Ellie is the expert in Final Fantasy VIII. So she was actually telling me about Sorceress Adele.
Yep.
I'm not an expert in 8, but
I know.
It was something about. It was something about Adele and Ultimecia and all that.
8 is the one I know best of the final or the PlayStation era. So
right. So there's something about all this that whole thing I haven't played. So
8 is fantastic.
So I don't.
8.
I trust, but I trust it is.
8 is a very very cohesive and tightly wrapped story. It's really really well executed. It's just the transition between the first half and the second half is very rough, but it's cohesive.
Right. But it's the whole thing about if we're going also into time fuckery. I suppose 8 is one game to go. You know.
Oh yeah.
So if we're imagine like maybe in very very ancient times, the ancients or the precursors of the ancients shot Ultima in some form of, let's go with Dalamud parallels. Imagine there's some like satellite orbiting at some somewhere in the space with her inside, and she's been trying to influence the world from above. Then when the sundering happened, it wouldn't have hit her, if it makes sense. But then again, it's the whole thing is is when it comes to Ultima, what I'm really interested in knowing is what her aim really is in all of this.
I mean, to be worshipped.
I mean, yeah, but
Yeah, but like,
aside from that, there has to be a motive, and I have my suspicions
I mean, it could
based
be
on.
it could be something as simple as, Ultima is this ubiquitous force throughout the universe that manifests on worlds, and and basically a great filter had not Medion interfered, and those that overcome Ultima become like the plenty, and those that don't go the way of what's that planet with the Terminator Judgment Day bots?
Carillion?
Yes, Corellia.
That's Carillia.
Yeah, so yeah, we don't know, and that's what I want to know more about. Like what are the things that we don't know about yet about
The,
the actual
the thing about
makeup of the world?
the,
But
the thing about Meteon is that I really, really suspect that Meteon is the product of Ultima's scheming.
I hate
That's the
Medion.
thing.
I really hate Medion. Um, so I
But Meteon is a really. You're going to laugh at me at the comparison,
I
but
thought so.
hear me out.
Mhm.
Um, um, the concept of Meteon is similar to Necron in the sense that it's like this weird thing that appears out of nowhere, and we're supposed to believe that it's the greatest
Oh,
threat
that's
and
just
all
Final
that.
Fantasy. That's just Final Fantasy. it's
Give me a moment. Give me a moment. From a narrative perspective, in 9, it made sense in kind of, but it's still, one of these moments in which like there's this break in the narrative, and it's weird because you're faced with something that came out of nowhere, right?
yeah.
In 9, at least you fight the final boss as Kuja, which is basically the one you basically been facing the entire time. So at least you get the payoff of that build up, and then Necron, you can just think of Necron as fighting a concept, and even if it's weird, it's a weird break in narrative from purely that perspective, it kind of works. No one is going to tell you that the final sequence in 9 is badly done. In 14, this is not the same. There's no trace of Meteon all this time in 14,
Well,
and when we're into huh?
There's one, but okay, go ahead.
If you mean the
I do.
the the Nero thing, well,
No. Oh, yeah,
but
I do. Absolutely. But I don't think that was intentional, and I don't think they even had a concept of Medion at that point.
no, I don't think it either. But like, but maybe they have the concept of something they wanted to portray. Nothing defined. Maybe they had that, but it's more important. Maybe I don't think it's Meteon. I think the mistake of understanding the Morse code. It's Morse. I think it's.
It is Morse
No.
code. My thing
right, it's
is,
Morse.
if this was a signal that was kind of being broadcast throughout the universe at a subconscious level, the Alphatrons would have picked it up. And I think the mistake was on that point not having Omega bring it up at all. Even during the Omega side quests that we had, that would have been a perfect opportunity to bring that up. And
Right.
just say,
But
hey,
it
there's this
didn't.
signal out there. Every race at a certain point discovers this signal. And all it says is it's all wrong. That would have been enough
Yes.
for me to say, okay, what is this?
However, what's the thing though, that I think the mistake is that we're thinking it's Meteon's signal it's picking up because she has that line of this is wrong, it's all wrong, right? What if it's not Meteon? She's just quoting that line and misleading us into not that she wants us to mislead us, but rather than the game kind of misleads us, or when it could just be referencing that, and the real cause of that it's all wrong means something different.
It's possible.
Because it's all wrong. It's a concept that it's being brought up more than once in 14, and I'm seriously believing that what it truly means is that the world of 14 is all wrong. I mean, Sundered Etheris is all wrong. But I mean, it's because because after all, that's the truth. It's all wrong.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, we also know that the reality that Medion was given was also all wrong to her, and that's kind of the interpretation I go with. That the world she was expecting to find in space was not the world she got. Mm-hmm. She got reality, hard and to the face, and that is kind of what I see her saying. Oh my God, it's all wrong. Nothing here is what I was told it would be. What is this? This needs to be put out of its misery. Everyone's suffering. We need to stop this, and that's kind of where I see that fitting in.
The problem, the thing that it's bothering me. I really suspect Ultima has a hand in Meteon's creation.
Mm-hmm.
Can't be a coincidence that the whole mess of pandemonium was happening right beneath Elpis.
Right.
And if there was someone that was susceptible to Oracite influence, or rather Ultima influence, which happens with people with not exactly the most mental, emotional, stable conditions, that would have been Hermes.
Right.
So, and can't be a coincidence that there is, very, very telling symbolically structure in that beneath Elpis, that you're kind of like, you're going there and you think, and it's meant to evoke you of heaven, right? Right beneath that is Pandemonium.
Right.
It's the presence of Ultima corrupt, and the cages and the cells beneath that. So that's another reason why I tell that Elpis is, as much as I like Elpis, because it's the opportunity to roam around a bit in the world unsundered. Elpis is easily the most misleading part of Endwalker, and I think it capitalizes on that.
Oh, it absolutely
the fact
does.
that people is so the fact that people are so enamored of going to Elpis, that's the point in the story in which that's where the real manipulation happens. And when you start,
I'll say I loved Elpis, but I also hate Elpis, and that's exactly why. Because it's very distracting, if that makes any sense. It's very much designed.
Oh, it does.
It's designed to distract you at every level. Say, oh, look, we're in the Unsundered world. Oh my God, we're running around with Emetzelk and Hythlodaeus. Oh my God, Vana is here. This is awesome. Meanwhile, you're not seeing everything that's going on. And you have this little snippet of the Unsundered world that isn't really representative of all of it. And it's very distracting.
Endwalker as a whole has a structure that is meant to confuse you, to be precise. So let me put it this way. In other expansions, like the other one that has had a split was Stormblood.
Right.
But in Stormblood it kind of makes sense, because you have like 3 areas for Eurabania, you have 3 areas for Othard, so there's like a sense of connection, right?
Right.
It doesn't feel like it's disjointed. Like you have this split, and it's like, split in 2. Maybe I would have liked to explore all of Yanxia, maybe Naxia, but aside from that,
no, it's gonna be a dungeon. you get a dungeon.
But it's all right. But the expansion didn't feel disjointed.
Right.
And then in Heavensward, we're basically around Kurthas and the Sea of Clouds and Dravania. It's basically like two adjoining areas, so
Right.
it works fine. We go to in Shadowbringers, we go to Northrend, which is basically Eorzea in the first.
No, it's
and
it's Lightning Returns.
Yeah,
It's
it
just
is,
like-
but it's cohesive in that aspect. And we go to you go in Dontrell and we go to Tural, and it's all Tural. It's Yok Tural and Shak Tural.
Yep.
And but I mean it's two sides, but it's connected. However, Endwalker is the outlier of this because think of the areas we go to visit in Endwalker. You got Charlian, Labyrinthus. You got Thavner, which is quite far away. We got Garlemald, which is another right at the north. We got the moon outside of the planet. We got Elpis in the past, and we got Ultima Thule, wherever the fuck it is.
It's yeah. You're right. That's pretty disjointed. Thematically, there's not a whole lot tying those zones together.
It's not. So it's that outlier that's meant to distract you from not being joined. It's all of this, and it even doesn't make sense to say that. No, but it's the only parts of the world map that they have to reveal, and I'm like, have you paused to look at the big ass clouds above Ilsabard or what?
Uncloud Ilsabard. Synodic scribe pops up, starts yelling in chat. Uncloud Ilsabard.
But no, the only places we visit new in Etheris proper, in Endwalker, Charlian, Thavner, and Garlemald, all very, very quite far away from each other. Well, Garlemald not that far away from Thavner, but far away enough, not joined. I mean, two islands, an isolated empire in the blasted Iblan Rime, and then the other three places. One out of the planet, the other in the past, and the other were big question marks.
Right.
So it's really distinct, and there's no cohesion, not reasonable cohesion. That's the word. There's no reason on that.
Right.
Endwalker is I'm using reason because this is one of the themes introduced in Dontrell.
What you want reason?
And what we're experiencing is a lack of reason. If you think of the twin aspects of Asem, because that's what blood siblings represent as a result of reason. Asem or the Word of Light would be resolve, and Hades is reason. So right now, in the situation we found ourselves with the ending of Hell, we are missing reason. Think of that on a conceptual level.
Right.
We don't have reason. So we come from Endwalker. We to make things worse, we killed reason.
Yeah.
So if we go by that, all of that, but that's exactly how Orsight operates.
Yep.
It operates in desires and emotions, and shapes the world shapes reality based not on reason but on emotion, on desire,
on dynamis.
On dynamis, exactly. That's why we tie Orsight with dynamis, because it's exactly what it does. Exactly, it's exactly the same. So in that expansion, Endwalker, and we know that Orsight causes illusions because we had that in the Evilist raids. If that's what an Endwalker is meant to do, it's the Dynamis expansion, and we tie. I mean, Endwalker itself tied itself with Orsight by putting Pandemonium, tying it with Ultima and Evilist. I mean, so the game itself did it.
Man, I hate Dynamis. I really hate Dynamis. But I at least acknowledge Dynamis has a place in the story. We just don't know what it is yet. They tend to do 2 expansion arcs. So if something's introduced in one expansion, 2 expansions later, it'll pay off. So I think we'll get a.
8.0.
I think yeah.
8.0.
I think we'll get a Dynamis payoff in the next expansion. But I still hate it. I still vehemently dislike Dynas.
But again, it's the concept of things introduced out of nowhere that we're supposed to take it as something that makes sense and be like, oh, it don't make sense. I said that you were going to laugh at me, but I have a reasoning for it. Not going to elaborate that much on it, but
that's fine. I love to laugh. Please.
I compare Meteon and let's go with Dynamis as well, as something that suddenly it's a justification that we're supposed to swallow like that, with the Catman in Shadowbringers.
Right.
Because, and let me explain. Because from my experience, to be honest, I joined 14 when it was a Heavensward, so my experience with the raid series of the Crystal Tower was very, I don't know. I mean, I paid attention, but back then I was not lore diving for 14.
Right.
So I wasn't paying that much attention. But I mean, and also it didn't help that I was annoyed that it was back then that it was still you have to wait for the fates to get the crystals.
Oh, I hated that. That was awful.
So I was really, really annoyed about that that whole unlock thing. And
although
I postponed it.
I will say, I did appreciate that there was a progression that you had to go through to unlock something, but tying it to fates that are not always up was really obnoxious. Like, if you want to do a quest series or, run this dungeon 5 times, fine. But making people stand around and wait for something was, I hated it.
So yeah, it added to the element of I'm annoyed by this whole thing,
right.
And but back then
is that why you hate is that why you hate the Catman?
No, I have more I can explain why I hate the Catman in a moment. It's actually tied with this.
Okay.
So it's a character that appears for the raid series, and I will say I had no attachment at all to that character. It came out for a raid series, disappeared like that, and I'm like, okay, fine. I'm not going to even say great times because I was annoyed, but
thanks for the shitty times.
I was, and even back then, when there was not yet Alliance Roulette, getting the Alliance Red to pop to finish the questline was, I think we stayed on queue like maybe 2 hours.
Oh, so. I remember there used to be a drinking game where if the queue popped more than 3 times, you had to take a drink.
That's great.
I had it pop 15 times once while we were having a LAN party during one of the fan festivals.
Wow.
And it popped 15 times. And we were playing the drinking game. And so we went in there, we were already done. We were already all drunk by the time we went in.
Yeah, I was going to say, you had to be really wasted by the end.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes about the Catman, then, 2 expansions, like, Heavensward, Shadowbringers, no mention to that, raid series. I wasn't really a character that very much didn't leave any sort of impression on me, if it makes sense. Narratively speaking, didn't make sense to me either, because, well, when I go back and I search for traces of the narrative thing in game, there's not a single thread I can follow, if it makes sense. There's the raid series and that's all. But I can't. Whereas Hades is different because he's Emperor Solus, so you can trace him even just from the whole Garlean thing, right?
What's up, Lon?
But even back then, you go to the map. And see how the world is. The maps in different areas, and you can spot his handiwork there, naming things.
Right.
Like the Royal Gansanwe, and I'm like, you're not Subble, mate. Like you can you can spot these sort of things in 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 the map itself. You can spot his presence.
Hmm.
You can spot, like for example, in the Crystal Tower, that there's Asem symbol.
Right.
Which, one of the reasons I'm inclined to believe that one of his aims when inspiring civilizations to be built was leaving traces for if Asem woke up to find themselves. If it makes sense.
I 100% agree with that. I think that is absolutely accurate, which would imply that the ruins in Thanalan were also partly due to Emet influence.
Mm. Well,
Because,
Beladia is
yeah, Belladine.
worship Asima, so.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's also the whole thing of Belladia is the balance between I think it's the flame of magic and the fruit of knowledge, which
Hmm.
technically they're both concepts that you could associate with Hades. Really, is it the flame of might or the flame of magic? Actually, can't remember. But I do
Flame
know
of
that the other
magic.
is
It's flame of magic.
right.
So Lime
Right.
has a question. What are the odds that the next patch has more SM content? I feel like I'm in between that and the Sphene imposter being one of the sundered Asians. Um, so Meowth, do you want to go first?
Yes, odds are that Asem, the hook for 7.2 in 7.1, it was the moment to me. I could be wrong, of course. There's always you have to leave room for having to eat crow and be elegant about it. but but that for me that moment when we see the perspective from first point view, when she wakes up and she's like, "Where's my people? What's
Hmm.
happened? What happened to me?" It to me was a dead ringer for Asem, for what Asem's consciousness may experience or may have experienced at some point, and we haven't realized. So it leads me to think, really think, that Sphene, or if that's even her real name,
Hmm.
is one of Asem's shards, or was one of Asem's shards. Um, there's also so there's also there's also a curiosity here, because Sphene, if you take the letters of Sphene, the take the word, um, you can find the letters of Sphene in the name Persephone.
Okay.
So, so, and I've had people that know their Greek lore more than I do, the Greek myth, that Sphinx's role in the plot line so far as an AI, so at least, is very similar to to the there's something called the Eleusinian myths, mysteries in Orphic myth about Demeter and Persephone. So I'm not going to bother you with the whole
No, keep
discussion.
going. That's
Just
super
know.
interesting to me because I know we've kind of ascribed Azem as its own entity in the
Hmm.
ancient world, but we haven't really drawn a parallel to one of the ancient gods in relation to the others.
Oh,
So
it's
where would that
it's
fit
it's
in?
it's been there since Shadowbringers
Oh, I
Cup,
know, I
since
know.
especially since 5.3. But here's the thing: most people go for Asem as Persephone
Hmm.
just because she's the wife of Hades in myth, right?
Right.
It's like the most iconic Greek relationship because it's also the most stable and
Right.
healthy.
Yeah. They
because
tended to
and
not be very stable back then.
because I mean, one of the things that really define Hades in Greek myth, is that he's pretty much the only Greek god that's monogamous and utterly devoted to his wife
Right.
and faithful to her. That's why that's I mean, drawing the connection between Hades and Gemini,
Hmm.
which is easily the zodiac symbol, like the epitome of love, because it's two. You
Right.
know,
And it doesn't have to be like
it's
romantic love. In this case, it could be platonic love or love of family or something like that. We know Hades very much loved, the ancients and the world. And, anyone who was part of that.
Yes, but
So,
if you're drawing Asim's, if you're drawing parallel Persephone parallels with Asim already, there's a connotation there that you can't deny. Like after that, you can just play your own head canons. But
yeah,
when there's
I
an
mean,
intention,
my interpretation from Shadowbringers, like just plain base Shadowbringers, was that we were former lovers. And that's what I came away with. I know it's
well, yeah.
entirely headcanon, but that was like, oh my god, this is so good. And
And you got that from English, which is even much less specific than
right,
Japanese
super
and
vague,
French wording.
super vague. But as far as Azem, I don't want Sphene to be Azem, but precedent is against me. So on every shard we've visited or gone to, we have found a shard of us, presumably. We found Ardbert on the 1st. On the 13th, the original Galbez, which we have their memorial crystal, is presumably...
We don't have confirmation yet.
We don't have confirmation, but
it's
very heavily implied that that is also a shard of Azem. So if Sphene were to be a shard of Azem, I would not be shocked, but at the same time, I don't think it would fit entirely, because Sphene didn't really go out and explore as much as I feel like Azem would have. But at the same time, what if we're seeing an Azem that was forced into, extreme circumstances? But
if you know the how Garnet's character goes, she tries to get Zidane to kidnap her so she can explore and see for herself what's happening in her kingdom.
Yeah,
so
I get that.
There's an element of rebellion there as well.
But I feel like this is the second time we've seen Azem, if Sphene is Azem, put into extreme circumstances, because during the Sundering, or not the Sundering, but during the final days, we know Azem kind of peaced out and was like, I'm going to fix this on my own. Peace. I'm not going to help either side.
Do we know that? Because
we know they abstained, and we know they were not present.
That's what we're told. That's what we're told, Cobb. But
right, but we don't know.
We don't know. But I've got from A Realm Reborn enough.
Until we get an actual explanation for what Azem was doing, that's what we know.
But
it's possible, but I feel like Sphene would have been more likely to try and find another way. But given, let's say Azem was the only member of the convocation that was left, how would they have reacted? Like, they would have put the people first, and that, I feel like, is exactly what Sphene had done. She is always concerned with her people, even before herself. And so I could see the original Sphene being a shard of Azem. I don't like it, but I didn't like... I don't like the idea of shard hunting, because it leads into my endless loop theory, and I fucking hate that theory, and I don't want the game to end that way.
If it's any comfort to you, I'm finding enough evidence that disproves that theory of yours.
And that's fantastic. So. I have not found that yet. So, and everything I see just keeps leading towards that, and I'm just like, stop it. But
no.
Basically, but to quickly explain that theory, because we're running out of time. Basically, I have this theory that Azem in the past is actually us in the distant future, after we have rejoined with all of our shards from all of the different reflections, and then travel back in time. So we have that foreknowledge, and that's why Azem seems to know everything that's going on, not because they have precognition, but because they're remembering it from when they did it. And I really, really despise that. Yeah, I know. Final Fantasy VIII says hi. I know. So there is precedent for it, and I hate it, but there it is.
But at the same time, I disagree on that, in the sense that first I've been finding, and when it comes to this is after Dawn Trail, after every expansion, I replay MSQ as a whole. But after Dawn Trail, I decided to replay the expansion and check references for pretty much everything, every quest name even.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of them, and I'm using this as, and I'm using basically one crucial thing that Hades told us in Shadowbringers, that the truth of it all, that the real meat of things are only preserved in allegory, in song and scripture and paint.
Yep.
So I took that seriously because I know that in visuals, let's go with paint in that aspect. I know that with visuals, they tell stories visually. If you know color theory, composition, and
Yep.
stuff. I study fine arts and I specialize in visual rhetoric. So that is like slapping me in the face with it. In scripture, so many quest names and titles refer to literature and books, and I've been doing a lot of work of looking books and literary references, and every time I do that, it just reinforces a single concept where I see the story going and the real tale of Asam and Hades, if it makes sense. And when it comes to song, they use song titles. Then you go to read the lyrics, and many of them tell you themes that, tell you that. And one of them was actually not a quest name, but it was, so just to put you in perspective, it was, you know that cutscene when there's Alfino reporting? It's very early in 2.0. Alfino is reporting to Minfilia and the Science.
Yep.
About courses. What the students of Paldesion are investigating the Asians.
Yep.
And Minfilia asks him, what do we know about the Asians, more or less? And he replies, there are many and one. And I was like, I don't know if this is, I'm not an English native speaker, so I'm like, is this a real phrase of, is it a real form of speech, so to speak? So I want to check, and I realize it's actually not.
No, it's not.
It's the title of a song. I went to check the lyrics, and that short circuit my brain, because the lyrics of that are pretty much it's almost like a hymn to I mean, it's like a religious gospel text, right? But it's basically the concept of zodiac. It's also bear in mind that they are talking about the Asians here, and what they're saying is that they're waiting for their shepherd to come and fill the world with love and restore the world. That alone made me stop in my tracks, and that's the thing that right now I'm pretty much convinced, because I keep seeing it here and there and there, and then even that in Whitestone Black, the lyrics for P8S.
Yeah.
It was the thing that gave me the it was the thing that gave me the. I spent hours, days listening to Whitestone Black as I drew the flowcharts, the goddamn flowcharts, trying to decipher what the lyrics were saying, and now I think I know what they mean. Okay. But it all hinges on the thing that Asem did not defect the convocation, but is in fact, in a sense, the founder, the central piece of the Asians. And they've been waiting for Asem all this time, for whatever it is they're going to do. But Asem is their messiah, and that Asem died before the final days, and it had to be likely. If you ask me, it's likely. This requires meta-narrative, but this is in many short stories, and even the interlude with the Void Ark and stuff.
Right.
The reason Golbez Durante killed Golbez was because Golbez was corrupted, and Durante had to kill him
Right.
to spare him the fate of becoming corrupted and stuff. I mean, considering where we at in the interlude that leads to Dontrell and this story where seems to be heading, that's really, really crucial. But it's not the only time that we've had that theme.
Yeah.
And I suspect that when Asem died, that they asked Hades to carry it out, which would be really fucked up. But it would also be so cool.
That would be cool. I personally don't think Azem died. But that's just me. But ultimately, I don't think it really matters. And
they would have died anyway.
Yeah. I do want to say, I do want to address the other thing. Do you think Sphene is an Ascian? I hope not. What I would like to see is this is kind of the misguided, and I mentioned this earlier on the cast today, that I want this to be like the repercussions of what the Ascians did, but they have no guidance now and are just kind of trying to do the best they can. The best example I can think of would be the Peacekeepers from Farscape, where while they were created initially as a benevolent force, they became like absolute totalitarian dictatorship because that was the only way they knew how to continue fulfilling their purpose. And I think preservation is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I do agree that preservation is a totalitarian empire in the shadows, but not from the Ascians,
right?
But rather from what we believe they are our allies right now.
Yeah,
like we are part of that empire of shadows, which I'm pointing at Charlayan, and with the aid of the Garland Ironworks, because that's where the story in the Eighth Emerald Calamity timeline left it up. Thinking of that, you have to bear in mind that if with all the threats they've been laying about Final Fantasy titles, that it's picking up. There's a constant theme of, well, I suppose that in many RPGs you're a fugitive, but being labeled an outlaw, a heretic, a threat. We have that in 13. We have that in 16. We have that in Tactics. We have that in 12.
Yeah, we have that in 8 to some extent.
I'm not an expert in 8. So,
Galbadia declares you criminals.
Fleeing from those in power is hardly new topic in fantasy, but depends on how it's handled. You see the threats more clearly. And I'm thinking in this particular case, if the Warrior of Light were to realize the truth and imagine that the Warrior of Light awakens or discovers their real. If Asem was really the founder of the Ascians, and there's a bigger thing that the Ascian plan had to do, and finding out this, and I'm not going to say siding with the Ascians in the aspect of the rejoinings, because again, we discussed this, with preservation eating worlds, it's a real possibility that the shards actually don't exist anymore, that the remaining ones have been eaten. So this whole thing about shard travel is, if you ask me, it's balderdash. It would be a repeat of Shadowbringers of going into shards, and if you ask me, for now where we stand, in which we're basically at Act 2 of Final Fantasy XIV, it would be cheap. However, going to the alternate timeline in which all of this originated, especially Shadowbringers. Now that's a different way of going to a different world, thematically speaking, a twin world, if you will, that makes sense thematically speaking. Like the threats, they've already been laying the threats for that. What exactly we're going to find there, I have my suspicions, of course, but it's theory. I mean, I know on what I'm basing it, but again, this all requires receipts, and I have too many. I have too many, but it's so difficult to put it into words, if it makes sense.
Hmm.
I'm trying to do when I'm writing scripts, but I'm leaving so many things on the scripts as well. And I have to, which is annoying because I want to, properly document all these things.
Right.
But if I were to put you into narrating all these things, you would be having videos of 2 hours at least. So
Well,
I'm not
I
going
mean,
to do that.
you could make 8 15-minute videos.
But nah. I mean, it defies the purpose in a sense. If I started to pick apart everything, and besides, I think a merit that we try to do as lore divers is not just spelling the things out for the people, but also to get people to think.
Right.
If it makes sense.
No,
Because
absolutely.
that's the most important thing. That's the most important thing.
I'm gonna roll
So
dice.
when I approach, which not so many people think, if I must say, but it's when at least when I write or I draw anything, because I try to draw things from a symbolic approach, because I lore dive by drawing and writing weird things.
Right.
I don't spell things out because it would be too long if I had to spell things out, but also to like get the audience, pique their curiosity, so they start putting their own brains to work.
Right.
If it makes sense, I think that's the most important thing that we do. We get people thinking, and
Yes.
and again, now that we're at here and being like a bit more solemn, if you will, this for the audience who's watching us or other lore divers for that matter, don't feel that you have to believe what we say as gospel, because we're just same fans as every one of us is, and we can make mistakes, we can misread something, we can
We must always be right about everything.
We can err in our interpretations. We're all human. We are prone to mistake, and the wise thing to do in that aspect, when you make a mistake, you, instead of clinging to the mistaken approach, you sit back, you reevaluate, or if someone challenges you with an idea and disagrees with you, instead of this has to be like this because this is what I believe, no, you sit back, you listen. Instead of waiting for your turn in a conversation to talk and say your opinion, listen to what the other person is telling you, evaluate what they're saying to you, and either use your discernment to either adjust your own opinion to what you believe they're valid points, or if you disagree with them, you question yourself why I disagree with this, and then that will force you to elaborate and reason and reevaluate your whole train of reasoning, and it can also reinforce your own conclusions. I do that constantly. I whenever you guys challenge me with I actually disagree with you, I sit back and I listen carefully to the reasons you give me, and then I go back in my mind to why I reached this conclusion, and I compare, and then either I can adjust something or take something more better, because if I have a different angle, I can evaluate things better, or it reinforces me because I go back to the whole reason and like, no, I think this because this and that, if it makes sense. Now I gave you a bit of my own lore diving and reasoning technique, but was it how do you call it,
illuminating.
Educative, illuminating?
Yeah. I think it was, but I that's about all the time we have for this week. But we will be back next week to talk more about random things. We'll talk about
Yes.
the person on the patch art. We talked about it that during the
Yeah.
live letter episode. I think it's the kid with lightning sickness, but we'll see.
I
So
mean, it could be. Yeah,
yeah,
it would be interesting.
yeah. All right. So I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next week.
Yeah.
And no, Tetsu, just no, please. All right. Have a good one, everyone.